This is about subsidized lumber imports. It's about unfairly traded lumber imports, which continue to severely harm Montana mills, Montana workers, and Montana communities. President Obama needs to remain committed to reaching a new trade agreement that prioritizes the American worker and fights for good-paying jobs.
The biggest impact that we have been seeing, even since the softwood lumber agreement expired last year, is increased competition from Canadian sawmills. What it's doing is keeping lumber prices down pretty low to a point where it's really difficult for us to even compete in the market.
Now, Andy, what products do you offer that they also offer that are so competitive?
Generally, we produce stud grade lumber. It's the stuff that we would build houses with, framing lumber for houses. It's kind of a commodity product. There's really nothing special about it. Pretty much every sawmill can produce it, so we compete with pretty much everybody on that stuff.
Now, Andy, what about availability of logs? I understand that there's, for the last several years, without the possibility of cutting on national forest land, is it getting tougher and tougher to find wood?
Yeah, it is. There's been some improvement on that front lately. The Forest Service here in the Lolo has got quite a few projects that are in the works that they've been actually bidding and getting some timber available for the local mills. Part of the problem has been getting those timber sales down to a price where they're actually competitive in the market. So we're kind of getting pressured from both sides. The softwood lumber agreement, of course, keeps the price of our finished goods low, and competition for forest land timber keeps the prices of logs high. So we've got this situation where we're getting pressure from both sides and difficult to make ends meet in the middle.
Now, how has that affected you as far as the amount of staff, or have you reduced staff, or how have you had to deal with that?
Yeah, we had a pretty significant layoff last year in response to the softwood lumber agreement expiring. We laid off close to 50% of our workforce. It would have been the end of September of last year. Since then, we've added a few more people. We're probably, I would say probably 75% capacity right now as far as employment. We're about 50% capacity as far as production level, just because of availability of trees and the final price we can actually get out of our lumber.
Well, now, if President Obama and the administration were to go ahead and re-up with that softwood lumber agreement, how would that help you?
It depends on what form the softwood lumber agreement took. The old one that expired wasn't necessarily very good for the U.S. sawmills to begin with. And what we're facing right now is, I guess, a free-for-all out there. It's essentially a free market. And just the way that the Canadians price some of their raw timber and the strength of the U.S. dollar really puts us at a huge disadvantage. So depending on what kind of a form that softwood lumber agreement takes, it could be detrimental to U.S. mills, or it could help us out depending on what they agree to do.
Where it affects a mill like ours is all of our competition in western Montana is affected because they do make studs. And all of our competition, but Tricon and St. Regis, Sun Mountain, and Deer Lodge, that's what they make. RY in Townsend is another competitor. I'm talking about now buying logs. And if this trade agreement expiration is onerous on them, that could translate to something at the bid table that becomes onerous for us.
Now, in what way, Lauren?
The price of raw material would go higher, could go higher.
Okay.
Could go higher. Not necessarily, but it could go higher. And ironically, when this thing expired a year ago, the trade situation was far different between the two countries, and the ability to export for both countries was a lot better than it is today. The Chinese appetite for North American softwoods has been whetted for the time being, and they're not taking near as much as they had before. So that means that Canadian wood and some domestic wood needs to find a new home. And now, today, the strength of the Canadian dollar gives the Canadian manufacturers a huge advantage in our country. Today it was, I think, $1.32 and change was the exchange. So, you know, the agreement expiring was one thing, but the Canadians' inability to export to China and the Canadians' huge advantage because of the exchange rate has been more problematic for, I think, Montana mills than